They had never lost a war. In 3,000 years of conquest, their empire had swallowed 17 star systems. Their warriors were born to kill. They stood 3 meters tall with scales harder than metal and claws that could tear through steel doors. Every species they met either surrendered or died. There was no third option. Commander L stood on the bridge of his warship and looked at the small blue planet on his screen, Orion 4, a tiny world on the edge of known space. His scouts had found a human colony there, 12,000 of them, living in simple buildings near a river valley. L had heard of humans before, small creatures, soft skin, no claws, no fangs, no armor. They had appeared in the galaxy about 200 years ago and had spread to a few dozen worlds. They never fought wars, they never conquered anyone. They just built their little colonies and kept to themselves. The other officers laughed when they saw the images of the human settlement. The buildings were modest. There were no military bases, no orbital defense platforms, no weapons that the scanners could detect, just farms and homes and a few research buildings. "This will not even be a hunt," said one officer. "It will be a harvest." L agreed. He sent a message to the colony. He gave them 3 days to surrender. If they did not, his warriors would come down and kill every single one of them. This was the way. It had always worked before. On the planet below, a woman named received the transmission. She was the colony's chief scientist, a small woman with calm eyes and steady hands. She read the message twice, then walked to the colony's main building to find the leader. Was a man of 50 years with gray hair and a quiet voice. He had led this colony for 15 years. Before that, he had been a soldier on Earth. Before that, he had been many things. He read the message and nodded slowly. "Call everyone together," he said tonight. That evening, all 12,000 colonists gathered in the valley. Farmers stood next to scientists. Engineers stood next to teachers. Children held their parents' hands, stood on a small platform and explained what was coming. "The Empire has found us," he said. "They want us to surrender. If we do not, they will send their warriors to kill us." He paused and looked at the faces around him. No one was crying. No one was screaming. The colonists just listened quietly, waiting for him to continue. "They think they are the galaxy's greatest hunters," said. "They look at us and see weak creatures with no claws and no scales. They think we will be easy prey." A small smile crossed his face. "They do not know what humans are." In the crowd, a young woman named looked at her brother. He was 25 years old, tall and lean, with the patient eyes of a hunter. He had never fought in a war. He had never killed anyone. But like all humans on Orion 4, he had been trained. Not for this specific moment, but for any moment like it. "We have prepared for this possibility for 15 years, continued. "The tunnels are ready. The supplies are stored. The positions are mapped. Tonight we begin to move underground. Tomorrow, when they come, they will find an empty colony." An old man named raised his hand. "And then we do what our ancestors did on Earth for 2 million years, said. "We hunt." The colonists began moving that night. They did not run in panic. They walked calmly and quietly into the hills around the settlement. Hidden doors opened in the ground. Tunnel entrances appeared behind waterfalls and inside caves. Families helped each other carry supplies. No one left anyone behind. Supervised the scientific equipment being moved underground. Years of research, carefully packed and transported into the deep caves. They would find nothing useful when they arrived. Helped his sister carry weapons to a hidden cache near the eastern ridge. The weapons were simple, human-made, nothing fancy, but they were effective and, more importantly, they were quiet. "Do you think they will really come?" asked. "They will come," said. "They always do. That is what predators do when they smell what they think is weak prey." By morning, the colony was empty. The buildings still stood. The farm still had crops growing, but every human had vanished. They were underground now, in tunnels that went deep into the planet's crust. These tunnels connected to caves and hidden rooms and secret paths that the colonists had spent 15 years building. Made one final check of the surface before going underground himself. He stood in the center of the empty settlement and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the warships were waiting. Commander L probably thought he was about to win an easy victory. "You made a mistake," said quietly to the sky. "You saw a small species hiding in a quiet corner of the galaxy. You asked yourself why we stay in the shadows. You thought it was because we were afraid." He turned and walked toward a hidden entrance in the hillside. "You will learn the truth soon enough." The entrance closed behind him and the colony fell silent. Wind moved through empty streets. Birds landed on abandoned rooftops. Everything looked peaceful and calm. But deep underground, 12,000 humans were preparing for war. Not the kind of war they understood. Not a war of armies and battlefields and open combat. This would be a different kind of war. An older kind. The kind that humans had perfected long before they ever reached the stars. The kind that had made them the most dangerous species their home planet had ever known. The warships blocked out the sun when they arrived. Commander L stood on his bridge and watched the empty colony on his screens. His officers had expected to see humans running in fear. They had expected panic and chaos. Instead, they saw nothing. Empty buildings, silent streets, no movement at all. "Where are they?" asked one of the officers. El made a sound that was like a laugh. "They are hiding, like prey always does. Send the hunters." 200 warriors boarded their landing ships. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the elite of the Empire, trained from birth to hunt and kill. Each one stood 3 meters tall. Their scales were dark green, almost black, and harder than any armor humans could make. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. They carried plasma rifles, but most preferred to kill with their hands. It was more satisfying that way. The landing ships touched down in the center of the colony. The warriors spread out quickly, moving in groups of 10. They activated their thermal sensors. They sniffed the air. They searched every building, every room, every corner. They found nothing. The humans had left behind furniture and equipment. There was food still on tables, clothes still in closets, but no people. It was as if the entire colony had simply vanished. "They cannot have gone far," El said through the communication system. "Find their trail, hunt them down." The warriors moved into the wilderness around the colony. They were confident and eager. This was what they lived for: the hunt, the chase, the kill at the end. They had done this 1,000 times on 100 different worlds. The first warrior disappeared just as the sun was setting. His name was El, and he was a veteran of 30 campaigns. He was moving through a narrow canyon when something pulled him into the shadows. There was no scream, no weapon fire, just sudden silence. The warriors behind him found only his rifle lying on the ground, nothing else. "El, report," the squad leader called into his radio. No answer came. By midnight, 37 more warriors had vanished. Some disappeared while on patrol. Some vanished from their guard posts. One was taken while his squad was resting, pulled silently from the middle of the group without anyone noticing. They began to feel something unfamiliar: fear. In a hidden position 200 meters away, a young woman named watched a patrol through her scope. She was 23 years old and had been a farmer before today. Now she was something else, something older. She lay perfectly still, her body covered with a thermal blanket that hid her heat signature. She did not move. She barely breathed. They walked within 5 meters of her position and never knew she was there. Counted them 3 warriors, moving east toward the river. She whispered into her radio 3 targets, grid 7, moving east, river path. Somewhere in the darkness, her brother received the message. He was waiting near the river with 4 other colonists. They had been there for 6 hours, not moving, not making any sound. Patience was the first thing humans learned about hunting. You did not chase your prey. You waited for your prey to come to you. The three warriors reached the river and stopped to rest. They were tired. Their large bodies burned energy quickly, and they had been searching for hours without finding anything. One of them bent down to drink from the river. He never stood up again. The other two died before they could raise their weapons. It happened so fast and so quietly that even their communicators did not have time to send a distress signal. And his team vanished back into the darkness. They moved through paths they had memorized years ago. They knew every rock, every tree, every shadow. The did not. Back in the underground command center, tracked all the teams on a holographic map. She was calm and focused. Her job was to coordinate, to watch patterns, to find opportunities. Every time a patrol moved, she noted it. Every time they stopped to rest, she sent that information to the nearest team. The large group near the eastern hills is getting tired, she said into her communicator. They will need to rest soon. Team 6, prepare position. Understood, came the quiet reply. Stood beside her watching the map. He had not slept. None of them had. But humans could go without sleep for a long time when they needed to. Another gift from their ancestors. On Earth, they had hunted for days without rest, tracking animals until those animals simply collapsed from exhaustion. They do not understand what is happening, said. They think they are hunting us, but we are hunting them. Entered the command center with a report. 23 confirmed targets eliminated. No casualties on our side. No injuries. Nodded. Tell the teams to maintain pressure but stay safe. We do not need to rush. Time is on our side. Above ground, Commander L received his own reports. His voice grew louder with each one. 43 warriors lost. Then 50. Then 60. His officers looked at each other with confusion and fear. This was not supposed to happen. They were the hunters. They did not get hunted. Find them, L roared. Use every scanner, every sensor, every weapon. I want those humans found and killed. But the scanners showed nothing. The sensors detected nothing. The humans moved like ghosts through the darkness, striking and vanishing before they could respond. They were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. By dawn, 89 warriors were gone. Commander L stood on his bridge and stared at the planet below. For the first time in his long life, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The small, weak, clawless humans were killing his warriors, and he had no idea how to stop them. Deep underground in a cavern lit by soft blue lights gathered a group of young colonists around her. Some of them had never fought before today. They were scared, even though they tried to hide it. Understood. Fear was natural. Fear was human. The key was to use it, not be controlled by it. Let me tell you a story, she said, her voice calm and warm. A story about what we really are. The young people listened. Above them, somewhere in the darkness, they were still searching. But down here, there was time for a story. Millions of years ago, on our home planet Earth, we were not the strongest animals, began. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. The predators of Earth were terrifying. Huge cats that could run faster than any human, bears that could kill with one swing of their paw, wolves that hunted in packs. She paused and looked at the young faces around her. By all logic, we should have died. We should have been eaten by those predators and vanished from history. But we did not die. We survived. And then we did something that no other species on Earth ever did. We became the hunters, said a young man named. He was only 19, but he had already taken down 3 that night. Yes, said, we became the hunters, but not because we were strong. We won because we were patient. We won because we could work together. We won because we could do something no other predator on Earth could do. What? Asked a young woman named. We could walk, said with a small smile. We could walk and walk and walk for hours and days without stopping. The big predators were fast, but they got tired quickly. They needed rest. They needed shade. They could not sweat like we could. So our ancestors would find an animal and start walking after it, just walking, not running, walking. The young people leaned in, fascinated. The animal would run away, of course. It was faster than us, but our ancestors would follow. They would track its footprints. They would find where it rested, and they would keep walking, hour after hour, day after day. The animal would run again and again, but each time it got more tired. Each time it got weaker, until finally, after days of pursuit, it would collapse from exhaustion, and then our ancestors would kill it. Looked at each young face in turn. This is called persistence hunting, and it is what we are doing now. They are stronger and faster than us, but they get tired. They need food and water and rest. We do not need as much. We can keep going when they cannot, and we work together in ways they cannot understand. In another part of the tunnels was explaining the same concept to his team leaders. They stood around a rough map drawn on the cave wall. The communicate through radio signals said, "We communicate through everything, a look, a gesture, a tiny sound. Humans learn to hunt together before we learn to speak. We can coordinate without words. They cannot." An older man named nodded. He had been a teacher before the invasion. Now he led a team of 15 colonists. "We are also better at waiting. I watched a patrol for 4 hours last night. They got restless after 20 minutes. They started making noise after an hour. By 4 hours, they were exhausted and frustrated. We just have to be more patient than they are." "And we are," said, "we always have been." Above ground, Commander L was discovering this truth the hard way. His remaining warriors were tired and afraid. They had been awake for more than 30 hours, searching for an enemy they could not see. Their food supplies were running low. The planet's water sources seemed to be poisoned or trapped. Every time a patrol found fresh water, something bad happened. Warriors disappeared. Equipment malfunctioned. It was as if the very land was against them. L ordered orbital bombardment. His ships rained fire down on the colony and the surrounding area. Buildings burned. Trees exploded. The ground shook with the fury of the attack. When the smoke cleared, nothing had changed. The humans were deep underground, safe in tunnels that had been built to survive exactly this kind of assault. They had planned for everything. They had been planning for 15 years. They knew, El realized with horror. They knew we would come someday. They have been preparing for this. On Earth, humans had spent millions of years preparing to be predators. Every generation passed down knowledge to the next. How to track, how to wait, how to work together, how to never give up. This knowledge was written into their very blood, into the way their brains worked, into the way they saw the world. The colonists of Ariane 4 had used that knowledge to prepare for the day when something like that would find them. And now, that preparation was paying off. Coordinated another strike from her underground post. 3 warriors had stopped to rest near a small stream. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. Team 8 targets at grid 14. 3 hostiles, tired and distracted, move in. Led Team 8 through a narrow tunnel that opened behind a waterfall. They emerged in silence, moving through the darkness like shadows. They never heard them coming. The fight, if you could call it that, lasted less than 10 seconds. Reported in. 3 targets eliminated. No injuries, returning to position. Good work, said. Rest for 2 hours, then move to grid 22. More targets incoming. Underground, the colonists took turns resting and fighting. They ate small meals and drank clean water from underground springs. They talked quietly and shared stories. Some even laughed. They were tired, yes. They were scared, yes. But they were also doing what humans had always done. They were hunting. And they were very, very good at it. Commander L looked at his casualty reports and felt something cold growing in his chest. More than half his warriors were gone. The humans had not lost a single person. He was beginning to understand that he had made the worst mistake of his life. He had awakened something that should have been left sleeping. The third night was the worst for the Commander L had pulled his remaining warriors into a tight defensive circle near the center of the destroyed colony. There were only 93 of them left out of the original 200. They built fires and set up guard posts. They pointed their weapons into the darkness and waited. Nothing happened for hours. That was almost worse than being attacked. The waiting, the silence, the knowledge that somewhere out there in the shadows the humans were watching. El walked among his warriors and saw fear in their eyes. These were the elite hunters of the Empire. They had conquered worlds. They had slaughtered armies. But now they huddled together like frightened children, jumping at every sound. "This is wrong," one warrior whispered to another. "We are the hunters. We should not feel like this." "They are everywhere," the second warrior replied. "I can feel them watching us, but when I look there is nothing, just darkness." Deep underground, watched the camp on her holographic display. The colonists had placed tiny cameras and sensors throughout the area years ago, hidden in rocks and trees and even in the ruins of their own buildings. They had never found them. "They are afraid," said two. "Look at how they move. Look at how close they stay to each other. They have never felt this before." Nodded slowly. "Fear changes everything. It makes you tired faster. It makes you make mistakes. It is the hunter's greatest weapon, and they do not know how to handle it." He turned to a group of team leaders. "Tonight, we do not attack their bodies. We attack their minds. Let them hear us. Let them see shadows that might be us. Let them feel watched every second. But do not engage unless you have a perfect opportunity." The team leaders understood. This was psychological warfare, the oldest kind. Humans had been doing this since before they had language, making sounds in the night to scare prey, leaving signs that they were being followed, breaking the spirit of the enemy before breaking their body. Led his team to a ridge overlooking the camp. They moved in complete silence, communicating only with hand signals and facial expressions. When they reached their position, they spread out and became invisible among the rocks. Then they began. A small stone rolled down a hillside near the perimeter. Every warrior spun toward the sound, weapons raised. They saw nothing, just darkness. A few minutes later, a branch cracked on the other side of the camp. Again, weapons raised. Again, nothing visible. Then whispers, so quiet they could barely be heard. They did not understand human language, but something about those whispers touched something deep and ancient in their brains. Something that recognized the sound of predators communicating with each other. One young warrior could not take it anymore. He fired his plasma rifle into the darkness, screaming in fear and rage. The shot lit up the night for a moment, then faded. He had hit nothing. "Control yourself," his commander shouted, but the damage was done. The other warriors were even more scared now. The silence after the shot was somehow worse than before. In another position, and her team watched a small group of who had separated from the main camp to search for water. There were 5 of them, moving slowly through a dried riverbed. They were exhausted. They had not slept properly in 3 days. Waited patience, that was the key. Let them get tired, let them get careless, let them make a mistake. One of them sat down on a rock. He was too tired to continue. His companions argued with him for a moment, then left him behind to rest while they continued searching for water. Alone, that was the mistake. Moved like a ghost through the shadows. She had practiced this 1,000 times. Every colonist had. The warrior never knew she was there until it was too late. One moment of violence and then silence again. When the other 4 returned, they found their companion dead. No sign of what had killed him. No tracks, no evidence, just death in the darkness. They ran back to the main camp, abandoning their search for water. By morning, Commander L had lost 17 more warriors, not all of them to attacks. Some had simply broken under the pressure. They had run into the darkness, screaming, never to be seen again. Some had turned on each other in fear and confusion. They were falling apart from the inside. El looked at his remaining force. 43 warriors, less than a quarter of what he had started with. They were tired, hungry, thirsty, and terrified. He had never seen anything like this. He thought about calling for more warriors from orbit, but what good would that do? The humans would just destroy them too. He thought about bombing the planet until nothing was left alive, but his sensors could not find the human shelters, and he would just be wasting ammunition. For the first time in his life, Commander L considered surrender. Underground, the colonists allowed themselves a moment of celebration, brought out some dried fruit and clean water for everyone. Children who had been hiding in the deeper caves came up to hug their parents. There were smiles and quiet laughter. But did not celebrate. He stood apart, looking at the map, thinking about what came next. "We have broken them," said, approaching him. "They cannot fight much longer." "I know," said, "but we need to end this carefully. If we push too hard, they might do something desperate, something that could hurt many people." He thought for a long moment. "Contact their commander. Tell him I want to talk." The message was sent. Commander L received it on his personal communicator. A human voice, calm and clear, offering to meet, offering to explain. L did not want to admit defeat, but he wanted answers. He needed to understand what had happened here. He needed to know what the humans really were. He accepted the meeting. The meeting place was a flat area near the edge of the destroyed colony. Burned buildings stood in the background like broken teeth. The morning sun was just rising, turning the sky orange and gold. It would have been beautiful if not for the smell of smoke and death. Walked alone from the tree line. He was unarmed as he had promised. He wore simple clothes, nothing that looked military or threatening. He looked like what he had been for 15 years, a farmer, a leader of a small community, an ordinary man. Commander L walked from the opposite direction. He was 3 times height, covered in dark scales, armed with claws that could cut through steel. Behind him, at a safe distance, his remaining warriors watched with exhausted eyes. The 2 leaders stopped 5 meters apart. For a long moment, neither spoke. L studied the human, trying to understand how something so small and soft could have destroyed his elite force. "You wanted to talk," L finally said. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "So talk." Nodded calmly. "I wanted to give you a chance to leave. Take your warriors, go back to your ships, return to your empire, tell them what happened here." L made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. "What happened here? I do not even understand what happened here. We came to hunt a weak species. Instead, we found—" He could not finish the sentence. "You found humans," said simply. "What are you?" L demanded. "You have no claws, no fangs, no armor. Your bodies are slow and fragile. How did you do this? How did farmers and scientists and children destroy 200 of my best warriors?" Looked up at the massive alien. There was no fear in his eyes. There was no anger either, just calm understanding. "You asked the wrong question," said. "The question is not how we did this. The question is why we stay in the shadows, why we build small colonies in quiet corners, why we never conquer or make war like other species." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You thought it was because we were weak, because we were afraid, because we could not fight." "Yes," L admitted, "that is what everyone thinks." "Everyone is wrong." His voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it now, something old and cold. "We stay in the shadows because we know what we are, and what we are is dangerous." He gestured at the wilderness around them. "On our home planet, we were not always at the top. For millions of years, we were prey, small and weak, just like you said. The predators of Earth were terrifying. Cats that could run faster than wind, bears that could kill with one blow, wolves that hunted in perfect packs." L listened, confused but fascinated. "But we survived," continued. "And then we did something else. We started hunting back, not because we were stronger. We were never stronger. We hunted because we were patient, because we could work together in ways other species could not, because we never ever gave up. He let that hang in the air for a moment. Do you know what happened to the apex predators of Earth, the great cats, the massive bears, the powerful wolves? El shook his head. We killed them, all of them. Every single species that threatened us we hunted until they were gone, not in one battle, not in one generation. Over thousands and thousands of years we tracked them and killed them until none were left. The saber-toothed tigers, the dire wolves, the cave bears, all gone, erased from existence, by us. El felt cold despite the morning sun. We did not do this because we were evil, said. We did it because that is what we are. Persistence hunters, pack predators, the most patient and determined killers our planet ever produced. We do not stop, we do not give up, we do not forget. He took a step closer to the massive commander. We stay in the shadows because we remember what happens when we do not. Every species that ever threatened humanity has learned the same lesson. Attack us and we will hunt you. Not for a day, not for a year, for as long as it takes. We will follow you across stars and generations. We will never stop, and in the end you will lose, not because you are weak, but because we are humans, and this is what we do. El stood in silence. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had killed thousands of enemies with his own claws. But standing before this small, soft, clawless creature, he felt something he had never felt before. True fear. Take your warriors and go, said. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that humans are not prey. We are not weak. We stay in the shadows because it is safer for everyone. Safer for you. He turned and began walking back toward the tree line. Let us stay in our shadows, he said over his shoulder, and pray we never have to step into the light. Commander El watched him go. Then he turned to his remaining warriors. We are leaving, he said, now. No one argued. The ships lifted off from Ariane 4 that afternoon. 41 warriors returned to the Empire out of 200. Commander El wrote his report during the long journey home. It was the most important document he would ever create. Do not hunt the humans, he wrote. Do not threaten them. Do not invade their worlds or attack their colonies. Let them live in their quiet corners of the galaxy. Let them stay in their shadows. He paused, remembering the look in his eyes, the calm certainty, the ancient patience of a species that had spent millions of years becoming the perfect hunters. They are not hiding because they are afraid of us, he wrote. They are hiding because they are afraid of themselves. They know what they become when threatened, and that is something the galaxy does not want to see. The report became law in the Empire. Human colonies were marked as forbidden. No ship was ever allowed to approach them. When other species asked why, they did not explain. Some things were too terrible to put into words. On Ariane 4, the colonists rebuilt their homes. The children went back to school. The farmers returned to their fields. Life continued as it had before, quiet and peaceful. But deep underground the tunnels remained. The caches of supplies stayed full. The maps stayed memorized, because humans never forgot, and they were always ready. Just in case someone else needed to learn the lesson. Stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt colony and watched the sunset. Joined him after a while. Do you think they understood? She asked. Enough, said. They understood enough. He looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, they were carrying their message, spreading the warning. Other species would hear it and think twice before threatening human colonies. Not because humans wanted to be left alone, but because the galaxy was safer when they were. The shadows were peaceful, and humans had learned long ago that peace was better than the alternative. Better for everyone.